president has impeachment criteria.
This was 1976. It wasn't good, and what the progressives had accomplished with the New Deal was being weakened. And from then on, things started to go downhill. So it was a good time to start a liberal foundation in Los Angeles.
The story of Liberty Hill's founding is such a beautiful story of people coming together. They were young, they had been deeply influenced by the movements of the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and had inherited a tremendous amount of wealth and had a healthy sense of agitation.
Adam Hochschild, who started Mother Jones, and my brother, of course, and Opie Benz, who started Vanguard. I was introduced to Win, and Saul Landau that introduced us to Larry Janss.
He rounded us and Sarah Pillsbury and my former wife, Mendel. We had a meeting out at his place in Topanga Canyon.
We were all people who had come from wealthy philanthropic families who wanted to do philanthropy but in a different way.
I had a vision and I had the values, but I also had the fear that the four of us were going to be the perennial, permanent donors, which that was a real fear and a possibility, and that's not what we wanted. We didn't want no kings.
It was not enough to distribute wealth. You needed to distribute power.
Now you have to understand, again, for young people, there was no such thing as foundations funding grassroots organizing. It was all very mainstream. And the idea that somebody would actually fund the work as opposed to just doing neighborhood fundraisers or gathering what you can was somewhat unheard of.
We hired Mary Jo. We paid her $10,000 a year, but she only had to work like 70 hours a week.
Los Angeles was a really different place 50 years ago, and community groups did not know of each other's existence. There could be 5 different groups working in 5 different parts of the city, and they were not in touch with each other.
Sarah always felt that there didn't need to be a division between people of wealth and people in the grassroots movement, that there needed to be a partnership.
They went to progressive organizations that would need a copier or their telephone bill paid or something,
It was exciting working with all of them to come up with what our first guidelines, which were all kind of anti-everything. Anti-sexism and anti-racism, against police abuse, and so on. We learned to frame what we were doing in more positive ways.
We were in above our pay scale to making those kinds of decisions, and who better to make those kinds of funding decisions and policy decisions? Who would be better than the people or organizations that would be served?
That was our innovation.
The Community Funding Board was the heart and soul of Liberty Hill. It brought together people, white people, Asian people, black people, Latino people. Everybody came together.
That idea that philanthropic resources are a public good and they're community resources, that fundamental belief started on day one of Liberty Hill.
I've always marveled at Sarah Pillsbury and Win and some of the other founders who I didn't know personally. In their vision, writing a check was in and of itself an act of not just passive support, but active support, building a multi-class, multiracial movement.
Sarah is a force of nature, as she really is. We had so much fun. I mean, it was not work. It was exciting.
We were the first of the foundations that actually even dealt with gay rights. And then when AIDS came through, a lot of money did flow in the direction of dealing with the issue. We went before the city council to support the living wage, and ultimately it passed unanimously, even people who had been completely against it. It was just wonderful to see the kind of coordination across the city to make that happen.
They were very courageous. They were very revolutionary at the time. They were outside the box.
The founders of Liberty Hill wanted to turn philanthropy on its head, and they did.
From my role as the Chief Impact Officer at Liberty Hill, I see the founders' footprints, handprints everywhere. That is the legacy of the founders, who really made it a point to articulate that power should be in the hands of those that are directly impacted.
To their legacy and to their vision, it's been a remarkable journey.
So I look back starting out with the bologna sandwiches and fast forwarding to 50 years, Liberty Hill has grown into such a thriving force in the progressive movement in Los Angeles and the state.
I'm astonished that 50 years later, Liberty Hill is still here on one hand, and on the other hand, I'm not surprised. There's a true need, and whenever there's a need, there's people rise to the occasion and fill that need.
I'm flabbergasted how far it's come and how potently the idea has, from a little flint and steel, it's turned into this wonderful inferno.
I was proud of it. And as I keep saying, we never envisioned it, that it would become this. And that's wonderful that, you start something and years later it becomes something you never even imagined.
The activists in the city have done so much to support Liberty Hill. It's immeasurable. And I just feel really moved that I was part of building a home for them to live in.
Here's to the next
50 years of
solidarity
and progress.